Imagine a lion that wouldn't allow even a single step closer, imprisoned not only by bars, but by a past that left invisible scars. Now, imagine a child of just 7 years old, with his own traumas in his eyes and a courage that not even adults could understand. What happens when two pains meet in the same space? Maybe something magical, or maybe, just maybe, a silent revolution begins right there, with empathy, patience, and a sincere look. In this text, we will take you on a real, intense, and deeply transformative journey, which begins at the Serra Verde Sanctuary in the interior of Minas Gerais and ends inside the heart of each person who has ever felt broken. We will talk about animal rescue, traumas that speak loudly, love that heals, and how a simple act by a child was able to break down walls that no one else could. If you think that stories of overcoming only live in the pages of books, get ready. Reality can be even more inspiring. So if you believe that there is strength in sensitivity, that nature talks to those who know how to listen, and that children have much more to teach than we imagine, this content is for you. Come with me to discover how the Lion Sultan and little Miguel teach us what it really is: emotional connection. In the heart of the Serra Verde Sanctuary, a place created with sweat and love by Marina Cavalcante and her late husband, there lived a new guest who defied all the rules of coexistence. The Lion Sultan, rescued from an illegal circus, was the living portrait of a trauma animal deep. His golden mane was impressive, but it was his suspicious look that said it all. There was too much pain inside. Every attempt to get closer ended in threatening growls. Even the most experienced veterinarians backed away. It wasn't just the body that Sultan protected. He had built an emotional wall that no one could cross. Neither fresh meat, nor soft music, nor training techniques had any effect. Marina, despite decades of experience in the animal rescue, he found himself with his hands tied. And perhaps that was what hurt the most, seeing that giant trapped in his own armor of fear, unable to trust anyone. How could he reach him without touching what hurt him? Sultan's story could have ended there, just another sad story of an animal destroyed by human selfishness. But life, as capricious as it can be, had in store an unusual piece: a child. Even though no one knew it at the time, the arrival of someone unexpected, carrying his own broken pieces, would start a twist that would change not only the fate of the lion, but of the entire sanctuary. When Miguel arrived at the Serra Verde Sanctuary, no one could have imagined the impact that this 7-year-old boy would cause. Spending the holidays with his grandmother, Marina Cavalcante, he had the same melancholy in his brown eyes that shone in Sultan's. Separation of parents had left him confused, needy, and perhaps even a little lost. But as he looked at the lion in the corner of the enclosure, something awakened, as if he recognized in that animal a mirror of himself, someone wounded inside. The first approach was subtle. Miguel, curious, asked why the lion was so sad. Marina tried to explain that some wounds are invisible, that the pain you carry inside does not fade with time. But Miguel, with the simple logic of a sensitive child, answered something that dismantled any argument. He's just scared, just like I was when Daddy left. It was at that moment that Marina saw there was a real emotional connection forming. Raw, genuine, powerful, even in the face of fear and the strict protocols of the sanctuary, Miguel insisted. He just wanted to talk to the lion, and he did. In simple words, he told him about his longing, his silent nights, his unanswered questions. And the lion, to everyone's surprise, listened. He didn't growl, he didn't move away. For the first time in months, Sultan didn't react aggressively. It was as if those two broken souls had recognized each other in their pain. And from that moment, a bond was born that no one, absolutely no one, could have foreseen. The sanctuary's routine began to change, along with the relationship between Miguel and the Lion Sultan. Every day, the boy returned to the enclosure and, with the same sweetness as always, started a conversation with the lion. He told him about breakfast, about the mischievous monkeys, about missing his father, and in return he received calmer looks, a less hostile silence. Little by little the lion stopped growling when Miguel approached. It was as if the walls that Sultan had built began to crack. The most impressive thing is that he started to eat. First he accepted small pieces of meat that the boy threw through the bars. Then he started to lift his head when he heard the boy's voice. What not even the veterinary team could do, Miguel was doing with the strength of empathy and presence. It wasn't magic, it was humanity in its raw state. Human-animal relationship between the two became a topic of conversation among the sanctuary's employees, who didn't know whether to be more excited or apprehensive. Marina, observing everything, found herself between astonishment and hope. In more than 30 years of animal rescue, had never witnessed anything so pure. It was in this climate of discovery and renewal that the sanctuary gained new life, even though no one knew that the calm was just the prelude to a great storm. Because when everything seems to be improving, life has this strange habit of testing our faith in what we have built. Amidst the blossoming relationship between Miguel and the Lion Sultan, a heavy shadow fell over the Serra Verde sanctuary. Marina Cavalcante, always attentive to details, realized that the accounts did not add up. That was when the shock came. An unpayable debt of $200,000 threatened to swallow up years of work. Old papers, statements, and invoices exposed a financial hole that made no sense. Even the name Juliano Ferreira, the former accountant, appeared more often than he should have. Juliano had been hired by Carlos, Marina's deceased husband, and with the family's blind trust, he controlled the financial side of the sanctuary. But behind the professional facade, there was corruption and embezzlement of funds. Regular deposits to a non-existent company, documents with suspicious signatures, everything led one to believe that the sanctuary had been the victim of a cold-blooded scam. And the worst part, Marina, already overwhelmed with the emotional and practical management of the place, had no idea how to turn the situation around. The news hit the staff like a bombshell. The fear of seeing the sanctuary closed was real. And more than losing a place, it meant separating Sultan from Miguel and taking away the only safe home the animals had ever known. Marina, even though devastated, refused to give up. Like a good matriarch, she wiped away her tears and began to look for solutions, even though everything seemed to fall apart with each new discovery. And so, with the sanctuary on the brink of collapse, an idea emerged that mixed risk, courage, and a pinch of hope, telling the story to the world. It was Beatriz Campos, a young reporter full of energy and sensitivity, who lit a spark of hope in the Serra Verde sanctuary. Upon learning of the story of Thelion Sultan and the connection with the small Miguel, she saw not only an exciting story there, but a real chance for change. Marina, hesitant at first, was afraid of exposing her grandson, who was still so emotionally fragile. But the reporter proposed preserving the boy's identity, focusing on the greater cause, animal rescue, and the imminent threat to the sanctuary. The report began to be recorded. The cameras captured touching scenes between the boy and the lion, moments that seemed to come out of a movie. Miguel spoke of pain, longing, reunion, and Sultan responded with gestures, looks, and silences full of meaning. When the material was aired, the effect was immediate. The video went viral on social media, circulated on WhatsApp groups, and reached people who had never heard of the sanctuary. Viral reports spread like a wave of empathy across the digital sea. As solidarity donations, they began to drip, then to gush. A $10 here, $50 there, until big companies stepped in. People from all over Brazil wanted to help that lion and that boy. What had previously seemed like an inevitable end now took on the appearance of a possible miracle. Marina, moved, could hardly believe it, but she knew the road would be long. The video touched hearts, but it also lit up where there had been darkness before, including truths that were about to come to light, linked to the past that she thought she understood. Amid the wave of solidarity and relief that the report brought, Marina did not expect to be hit by an emotional bomb from the past. While rummaging through old documents in an attempt to understand how Juliano Ferreira had planned the coup, she found something unusual. A letter from Carlos, her deceased husband, addressed to her. The tone was one of regret. And there, between lines shaken by illness, came the confession. Carlos had had a brief affair with a veterinarian, and from that relationship was born Pedro, one illegitimate child that he never had the courage to reveal. The pain of betrayal was heavy, but there was more. Juliano, in addition to being a corrupt accountant, was Pedro's mother's cousin and used the child as part of a web of blackmail. When he realized that the viral report could affect his plans, he showed up at the sanctuary with lawyers and Pedro. He tried to force Marina to acknowledge a non-existent debt. But Pedro, unlike his manipulative father, was humble, curious, and genuinely interested in what that place represented. There was no malice in his eyes, only the desire to belong. Marina, despite the shock, recognized there was a second chance, maybe not with Carlos, but with what he left behind. She accepted Pedro, not as the legacy of a betrayal, but as part of the family that the sanctuary had become. The gesture moved even the most skeptical. After all, what is rescuing animals if not a reflection of our ability to accept even what life offers us in a crooked way? But the calm would be brief. Fate still had twists and turns in store, and one of them would come accompanied by a high fever and silence in Sultão's cage. What seemed like a simple cold turned into a real concern. Miguel woke up feverish and exhausted, and within a few days he was hospitalized. The initial suspicion was that he had an infection linked to his contact with Sultão, which set off alarm bells. Rafaela, his mother, was in a panic. "I knew that lion would bring trouble," she exclaimed in the hospital corridors. But the tests proved otherwise. The infection was rare, yes, but it did not come from the lion. Miguel had possibly contracted the bacteria at school long before his contact with the animal. The emotional impact was as strong as the physical one. Separated from Sultão, the boy wasted away in silence. His eyes lost their sparkle, his energy vanished. Marina, seeing her grandson suffer, had a simple and brilliant idea: to install cameras in Sultão's enclosure, connected to a tablet in the hospital room. And it worked. The boy smiled when he saw the lion lying down, even from a distance, but the longing was mutual. Sultão also seemed different, agitated, more withdrawn, as if he felt that something was missing. He was Pedro, now fully inserted into the sanctuary, had an idea: to take something with Miguel's scent to the lion. A used T-shirt. And there, what everyone already knew was confirmed. The bond between boy and beast was real. Sultão smelled the piece, then lay down on it, as if protecting a treasure. While Miguel struggled to heal, Pedro took care of Sultão, and Marina watched from afar, her heart divided between pride and concern. It was a dance of affection from a distance, stitched together by pain, memory, and hope. Just when it seemed like the sanctuary was finally breathing, with Miguel recovering and Sultão calmer under Pedro's care, a new threat emerged, this time outside the bars. Octavio Braganza, a businessman known for dubious projects, bought all the land around the Serra Verde sanctuary. His plan? To build a luxury resort. Construction noise, intense movement and smoke began to invade the animal refuge. The carefully restored peace was hanging by a thread. Marina tried everything: conversations, legal appeals, even meetings with city councillors. But the construction was technically legal, and Octavio knew it. Cynically, he said, "I can't buy the sanctuary, but I can make its existence unbearable." The answer came, as it always did in that place, with empathy, strategy, and a pinch of boldness. It was Miguel, still recovering, who suggested, "What if we showed the world what he is doing to the animals?" There you have it. Another seed was planted. Beatriz returned with her team, this time to film the impacts of their illegal construction. Although disguised as a business venture, the new video showed stressed animals, some aggressive, others refusing food. The most powerful moment came with Sultan, who, pressured by the constant noise, destroyed part of his enclosure in crisis. The commotion was general. The video went viral. Public opinion turned the game. Inspectors showed up and discovered a series of environmental irregularities. Result: immediate embargo on the work and criminal proceedings against Otavio. But the emotional damage was already done. Amidst the calm that followed the embargo on Otavio Bragança's works, Marina decided to face a pain that she had left hanging. The revelations about Carlos, her deceased husband. With the courage of someone who has weathered too many storms, she returned to his old office, a room she had avoided since his death. It was there, in a false bottom of a drawer, that she found a leather diary and an envelope with his name on it. With each page, the image of the perfect man crumbled and gave way to someone real, complex, full of flaws and fears. Carlos described in detail his involvement with Pedro's mother, the birth of the boy, and how he fell into the hands of Juliano Ferreira, the accountant. Pedro's mother, Livia's cousin, used the situation to blackmail him for years, threatening to expose the affair. Carlos gave in, diverted funds from the sanctuary, and created a web of lies, but not because he was bad, but out of fear. Fear of losing Marina, fear of tarnishing what they had built. It was at that point that Marina understood. He was not the saint she had idealized, but he was human, and humans make mistakes. The pain of disappointment was replaced by a curious kind of relief. Now she knew. Now she could look Pedro in the eye and say with conviction, "You are not a mistake. You are part of this." The two sat on the dusty floor and read the diary together. Pedro, with tears in his eyes, asked if Carlos loved him. Marina answered without hesitation, "In his own way, yes, and I love him too." It was the beginning of a new cycle, where the past was not forgotten, but used as fertilizer for what was to come, and what was to come, as always, would be intense. With the past finally revealed, and Carlos's ghosts transformed into memory and learning, the Serra Verde sanctuary began to flourish in a new way. Pedro, now part of the team, discovered a calling there that he never imagined he had. Caring for animals gave him meaning, purpose, and also a connection with the father he met through the words of others. Miguel, in turn, recovered and full of life, gradually returned to Sultan, and each reunion between the two was like attending a class in silent affection. As solidarity donations kept arriving, the image of the boy and the lion went viral again, inspiring schools, NGOs, and even artists. What was once just an animal shelter became a symbol of empathy, overcoming, and reconnection. The human-animal relationship between Miguel and Sultan became a case study for veterinarians and psychologists. Marina, now with her soul at peace, led everything with a different smile, more serene, lighter, like someone who has already experienced deep pain and chose to transform each one of them into hope. And even with so many challenges overcome, no one there believed in perfect endings. Life would still have its ups and downs, but now there was strength, there was unity, and there was purpose. Miguel kept saying, with the wisdom of children who have felt too much, he just needed someone who understood his pain. This phrase, said with such simplicity, became the sanctuary's motto, because deep down, everyone there, humans and animals, was just trying to be seen, understood, and accepted, and that, yes, changes everything. And now, tell me, how many times in your life have you felt like the lion Sultan, hiding in the corner, growling at the world, carrying pain that no one sees? Or like Miguel, trying to understand a world that seems too big for a small heart? This story reminds us of something essential. Sometimes what heals is not medicine but presence. It is not what we say but what we feel, and allow others to feel it too. Maybe you're going through a tough time, dealing with your own traumas, or trying to help someone break out of an invisible cage. If so, what can you learn from the bond between a child and a lion? What can you transform simply by being present, by looking with empathy, by believing in second chances? The sanctuary may be there inside you, just waiting for you to take care of it. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Spread this message of empathy and transformation. Press the button Enjoy, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any more content that touches your heart. Share this with someone who needs to hear this today, and tell me here in the comments, have you ever had such a strong connection with an animal or someone who was emotionally hurt? I'll love reading your story.